Can minimalism make you happier? That's the question I want to discuss today, and I want to use actual studies and research to inform how I answer this question. I have a PhD in clinical psychology, so I often think about things from a scientific approach. Is there research to support this idea, and what research is there? And I will say that as I started doing some research, there weren't actually that many studies on this topic. So I think anytime there is a bit of a scarcity of research on something, it's important to take it with a grain of salt. Realize that you need to have a lot of replications of studies before you can really say anything extremely confidently. So all of these findings are sort of in that early phase, but I still decided I wanted to do a literature search on minimalism and its relationship to psychology and well-being, because I thought it was kind of interesting and I wanted to know, what does the science actually say about it? So today I'm going to be going in and telling you what the field of psychology actually says about the effects of minimalism. Hi, if we haven't met before, I'm Aylin, and this is my channel, Slice of Light. If you're interested in watching more videos on simple living, minimalism, building an empowering mindset, hit the subscribe button below. It actually supports me, so I'd appreciate it if you're willing to do that. And if you end up liking this video, hit the thumbs up button. I'd also really appreciate that. So I first thought about, could minimalism actually make you happier? Because to me, the core of minimalism is values-based living. Living according to what you care about and what you value in your life, and maybe placing a little less emphasis on material belongings. And so I just thought, theoretically, from my knowledge of the field of psychology, what do I know about values-based living? Well, I know that there are actual therapies, so evidence-based treatments for various psychological problems that are focused on increasing values-based living, that actually the core of those treatments, specifically acceptance and commitment therapy, is focused on identifying your values and committing to action that allows you to pursue those values or get closer to those values all the time. And they found that that type of therapy that focuses on values-based living actually improves things like depression and actually a lot of different psychological problems. So it sort of stands to reason that if minimalism is really about values-based living at its core, that it might actually reduce stress or sadness and increase your overall happiness and sense of fulfillment. It just makes sense that if you spend more of your time focused on your relationships or other areas of your life that you really value, it just makes sense that you would feel a little bit happier, wouldn't it? But I did want to see, was there actual literature and research to support this idea that minimalism might actually make you happier? And so I started doing some literature searches and I started finding a handful of studies, but I do think if you put together the research that's currently out there, it starts to tell a story. There's some studies that show that consumerist values, so placing a lot of emphasis on materialism, is linked to several things. It's been linked to higher levels of debt, caring less about the environment, and lower levels of a personal sense of well-being. All of these things could really contribute to your overall level of happiness. Think about it. It makes sense. If you're a little bit more consumeristic and maybe materialistic, you're likely doling out larger sums of money on things that don't really matter, so it would make sense that it's linked to debt. And debt certainly probably doesn't make you happier. And then it also makes sense that if you're a little bit more consumeristic, you don't have the same sense of well-being. Now, we don't know yet based on research the exact mechanism behind that, but that research would suggest that perhaps it's possible that if you try to reduce your materialism and your focus on material goods, it's possible that it might increase your sense of well-being as well. Other research has shown a negative correlation between materialism and satisfaction in life, which I think is so important as far as happiness goes. If you're not satisfied in life, then you're not enjoying it. So I thought this was all interesting, but then I also wondered, can clutter have an effect on your psychology? Because I feel like a lot of people who talk about minimalism talk about, well, yes, it's about decluttering, but really it's about these bigger core values and living a values-based life and living according to what you think is important. But I kind of wondered, can those superficial aspects of minimalism actually also have a positive impact on your psychology? Like, can simply the simple act of decluttering a space make you happier to some degree? Now, subjectively, I certainly have found that to be the case, that I just feel like when there's less clutter around, I'm less stressed out and I can focus better. but I wanted to see what does the research say on a population level. So again, there wasn't a huge amount of research, but I found this one study that surveyed a number of Americans and Canadians found that clutter was linked to well-being. So the more clutter they had, the less well-being they felt. And then there was this other study on a bunch of college students that found that clutter was linked to a sense of home, independent of social desirability. So let me break that down. That might be a little difficult to understand, but basically what that means is that people had a better sense of home, like that feeling of home and identifying with home and enjoying their home if they had less clutter. They also controlled for social desirability. So basically it wasn't about, ooh, does my home look nice for other people to come over and like it? It was actually their own independent sense of home. And so what that kind of tells me is that it's very likely that if you have less clutter in your home, you're actually going to feel a better sense of home and of place when you're in your space, even beyond what you might feel in regards to impressing other people. Like your own sense of being at peace at home is likely going to feel more fulfilling and better if there's less clutter. Now, I do think that's a bit of a leap based on this one study, but taking these studies together, it kind of just tells this story that having less clutter might actually improve your well-being and your sense of home when you're in your space. So you might start to think, because this was my next question, well, what keeps clutter around psychologically? Like what processes keep the clutter in my space? What is the psychological driver of clutter? And of course, there are lots of factors that affect this, but one that seems to come out in the literature a lot is procrastination, that there's a link between the amount of clutter you have and how much you procrastinate, which kind of makes sense in a way. It does really fit well with what my own personal experience has been, where if I kind of procrastinate or I just kind of leave things off, my space starts to get messier and messier. I just notice higher levels of clutter around. So then I started to wonder, well, how do I reduce procrastination? And so just based off of my experience delivering therapy, I came up with a few strategies to try to reduce procrastination, specifically in the realm of decluttering. So a first step to help reduce that procrastination and get up and declutter is to really find ways to improve your motivation. Now, easier said than done, but I do think that if you really spend some time reflecting on how minimalism might affect your life, really imagining what it would feel like if there were less clutter in your home, and having that image in your head can really increase motivation. Talking about minimalism with friends and family, watching YouTube content or reading books about minimalism can increase your motivation and your overall momentum to get that decluttering done. My second piece of advice for reducing procrastination when it comes to decluttering is to figure out what are the barriers for me in getting up and decluttering. Are there specific things that get in the way in the moment when you decide to procrastinate? I know for me, I think often I use fatigue and being just tired as an excuse to put off decluttering. Like sometimes, especially if it's later in the day, I just get kind of tired, I'm kind of worn out from the day, and I almost start to frame it as self-care or something like, oh, I just need to rest a little bit more, or I just don't have the energy. But those types of permission-giving thoughts and that feeling of fatigue is just getting in my way. Because what I have found is that if I recognize, okay, I'm feeling just tired right now, but once I get going, once I start to declutter, my energy is gonna go back up. Once I've reminded myself of that and just gotten myself to go declutter or to go tidy up a bit, I've found that it really ends up working out. I do feel more energy from starting to do it, and I realized that that fatigue in the first place wasn't the best excuse. And so fatigue for me was kind of my excuse for not decluttering, but figure out what are excuses that you have. Do you need to budget more time into your schedule to declutter? Are there specific types of permission-giving thoughts that keep you from going and decluttering in the moment when you do have the time? Could a barrier for you be perfectionism, that you're afraid to declutter because you're afraid that you're not going to be perfect at decluttering, so you just kind of put it off? Figure out what's getting in your way and really try to address it head on. Problem solve that barrier so that it doesn't keep you from getting to where you want to be. Finally, my third piece of advice for reducing procrastination is create the conditions or the environment that make it much easier or more likely that you're going to go take action and declutter. So for example, maybe set short 5-minute goals of just, I'm going to do 5 minutes of decluttering before I go to bed. Or maybe it's about doing it at a time of day when you have more energy, or maybe it's getting someone in your life on board to declutter with you and to help you with that motivation. But figure out what are specific conditions in my environment that I can create that will increase my motivation for decluttering. Now, I got a little off topic from the beginning of this video, but I think coming back, looking at the literature as a whole, the first thing I want to acknowledge is that there isn't a big literature base. I think there needs to be more research on this topic. But certainly a lot of the core principles in general of minimalism are linked to better life satisfaction and sense of well-being, which to me are metrics of happiness. So of course, with any type of research, it might apply to individuals differently, and this is just like overall an average of people. So I don't want to speak for everybody and individuals, but it does kind of tell me if I do give minimalism more of a try and really continue to try to pursue it, it's likely going to make me happier, give me more life satisfaction and a sense of well-being. And there's actual science to support that idea. So maybe you can just take this video as that little bit of extra boost of motivation to go declutter, to go pursue minimalism, to create more space in your life for things that you care about, and really focus on your values. Identify what areas of your life you want to be spending more of your time and energy on. And really go try to do that. Try to implement those changes into your life. Once you actually make those behavioral changes, it's going to become easier and easier as you go. And hopefully you'll experience that sense of improved life satisfaction. So thanks so much for watching. If you ended up liking this video, again, hit the thumbs up button. You can subscribe below. And that's all I have for you, but I hope you have a wonderful rest of your day. Bye.